Hello, everyone. It's Kathleen. I'm sorry you caught me right in the middle of trying to corral my curls here. um, yeah, they don't want to do it. So anyway, here we go. Welcome. It's Monday, and today this is actually our ninth live here. So I'm really excited about this. And today we're going to be talking about the foundations of English sentence structure. So, this is, I think, an important topic not only because, but for so many students, there's such a fear involved when you just hear the words English sentence structure. And I just don't, I'm here to help make it easier for you to find a way to put it all together for yourself. And this is how I had to do it for myself. Um, and I still do it on different topics, different things, but this is how I found that it really makes sense um, to me. And hopefully this will give you at least a starting point from which to work in trying to put all this information together because uh, everybody knows English sentence structure is complicated and it's confusing. The reason for that is before we get going here, don't forget to I'm not sure how many of you know, if you've seen my Instagram, you know that I'm holding a flash sale this weekend. So till midnight tonight. So in 24 hours, I'm holding a sale. I have a resource that I've put together for l- making sense of the four basic English sentence structures. And the resource comes with not only the lesson and how to break it down and the different parts, making sense of all the different parts, but also it comes with audio files so you can listen to the lesson as well as see it out. Because sometimes when you're reading it, because I've created a formula for the different structures, and sometimes just staring at the formula might be overwhelming. So it comes with audio files so that you can hear it, and hearing me explain it, hearing me read it, sometimes can make it easier for you to put it all together. But I really do try to lay it out in a manner. It's the way I learned it. It's the way I made sense of everything that I was learning. And, so anyway, I'm having a flash sale on it so that you can, have this resource to help you make sense of the four basic types, and everything else is built upon those four basic types. So, that goes through. The link is in the chat, and I will also put it in the comments. I mean, in the description. Sorry, I think I already did, but just in case, I'll make sure that it's there for you. But anyway, I think so many people get worked up about English sentence structure just because it's just it is complicated, and there are a lot of rules. And English is famous for having more exceptions to the rule than the rules. um, so it helps to understand why the structures are so complicated. And if you remember, on one of our first lives, I explained that English was developed with heavy influence from many other cultures. So there's Scandinavian cultural influences when you had, the Vikings and all of that culture expanding and conquering and occupying English speaking, areas for significant amounts of time. Sorry. For me, it's midnight for me, and it's been a very long day, so forgive me. So you had, yeah, what did I say? You had Scandinavian cultures, moving west and occupying England and, um, which was the main source of the English speaking language. But there's also Germanic influences, there's heavy French influences, and others. I'm not 100% sure of them, but we just had so many other influences on the language. We didn't develop, I say we, the English language didn't develop in a bubble. Some languages had that privilege of being able to develop their language without any outside influences. English did not. And so when one culture conquers another and takes over for however long they do, oftentimes it's more than just a year or 2, and so as people are having to live with this other linguistic influence, you accept a lot of it, you get used to it, sometimes you have to use it because the conquerors or the influencers insist upon it, and so you have generations of people who don't know that there was something before it, and so you get used to those rules and they get added in and mixed and, mingled and into your original language. And then you have someone else come in and do the same thing. And so it just develops with all these different rules that people just got used to and accepted. So that's why it's difficult. That's why there are so many exceptions. And that's why even this, with the spelling, um, excuse me, people use the example of the sound. That letter combination has many different sounds to it. And, you know, people joke about it all the time, but not understanding, and it's absolutely correct. How are you supposed to know? So, but not understanding that, you know, where it all came from. So anyway, so sentence structure. Right. So the first thing I want you to do, so that's why, so first thing we're going to talk about is why it even matters. Why do I have to care about the structure of a sentence? Can't I just say these words and people are going to, get the basic understanding of what I mean? Well, no, because, if you say, excuse me. I actually didn't even prepare a sentence for you today. But if you say words out of order, if you can say the same words, but if you put them in different places within the sentence, then it means different things because remember that language is built not just on sounds, but it's built on patterns. And so that's what a sentence structure is in any language. It's the pattern of how you put the words together. And where the word fits within the pattern determines a lot of times what the word means or how it affects the meaning of the sentence. So, you could have the same words put into a sentence, but by switching the order, it means something different. The words don't change, the definition of the words doesn't change, but the meaning of the sentence can change. And so, and then the other part of that too is you can have one word that you put in different places, and so the place in the sentence determines how the word is used. And so when you place it here, it means one thing. When you place it here, it means it's used in a different form, so it means something else. You've got nouns and verbs and adverbs and adjectives and the object of the sentence and the subject of the sentence. They've all been developed for a reason so that you can have structure. It's not called sentence structure for no particular reason. Think of the structure as, the structure of your building. And so you're building up your sounds and your vocabulary, your word bank. Those are your foundational elements. Um, that's the foundation that this structure is then built on, and that structure still has to be sturdy enough and consistent. You can't have a building that whose structure changes all the time, or it doesn't hold up and you don't have your building anymore. So that's why structure is important. Each language has their own structure, for the very same reason. And, you have millions of people speaking your language. If all of those people picked and chose how they were going to put the words together, nobody would understand each other. You have to have some consistency, something that everyone agrees upon is going to mean this, and this is going to stand for that when it's here. You have to have it, or there's no communication because then everybody's just making making it up, and there's if I'm saying these same words, but in my head they mean something different than the sounds and the words that you're using, and they mean it differently in your head, then there's no communication. We're not understanding each other. We're not taking that idea and transmitting it intact to each other. So that's why it's important. So um, just I'm just going to give you again. I have so much to say, and I have so much I want to share that I can never seem to keep it within this half hour. And I really want to do well today on that. So what I'm going to do first off, um, it's kind of changing a little bit here. Um, so your four basic sentence structures are you've got your simple, your simple sentence with your verb, your noun, and your verb. So I am, I am, I exist, I am speaking to you now. Okay. I speak. I work, you run, he plays. Okay, basic structure. And the noun and the verb are your that sorry, that's your clause. Okay, your main clause, the thing that the whole sentence is all about. And it can stand alone by itself. So that's your basic unit, all right? So and then you have compound sentences and complex sentences, and then compound complex sentences, and they all build on each other. Um, and I think what I might do is I'm gonna break this out because right now I wanna give you the essence. I wanna give you the tips of how to make it easier for you to tackle English sentence structure. This wasn't intended on being something that was going to, give you all the nuts and bolts of the particular structures. I wanted to come live so that I could, give you tips on how to make sense of it all like I did. But I think what I might do on the noon live, in 12 hours is I'm gonna give you just some brief examples of the 4 basic structures so that you can have something to go on, and I'll put sentences together and stuff so you can see that, because in retrospect, as I'm talking, I think it might be important for you. So, come live if you can at noon, and I will you'll get that, and I'll put this as a two-parter, a two-part live. Um, so anyway, so, so we went over why it matters. Again, because without the structure, there's no communication. So, all right, how do you tackle it? How do you figure it out in your brain? Because everybody, I mean, I can tell you how it made sense to me, and it might very well work for you. That might be the thing that works for you. But I also want to give you steps that I took that helped me to figure out for myself what everything meant, because I'm the type of learner who I like to have a lot of information about a topic so that I can sift and sort. And I have, because to me, the more pieces I have to the puzzle, the clearer a picture I can paint or I can piece together. And I tend to learn by piecing things together. Other people don't learn that way. Other people learn by simply being told. They can hear it or they can read it, and they get it, they understand it. But I tend to piece things together because I like to know, I like to go a little deeper over here because it might almost make sense to me, but I can't just accept almost making sense. And so I have to dig a little deeper here or there, or wait a minute, that doesn't seem to fit quite right. So I like to have a lot of information. And so what I do with that information is I I lay it all out. It to me, it's like putting together a puzzle. And I think the biggest difficulty that I had when learning English sentence structure was, again, when my class came into the school system. My class, we entered it at around 6 years old. We went to different, kindergartens and things. But when we all came into the town's school system, we were 6 years old. And at that time, my town was experimenting with different learning methods. And uh, s- they chose our class to test out different methods throughout our schooling. And so it didn't work. So, it caused issues, and so, you get incomplete information, and, um, some years they didn't put names to things, other years they did, label the parts and stuff. So it just didn't work out well, certainly not for me. I don't know about the other kids, but it just didn't work out well for me. I needed more structure, which is why I didn't get my sentence structures. Um, more consistency, more, yeah, structure, I guess. But again, they were changing structures. So, anyway, that's what happened with my schooling. And so it forced me to have to figure it out in a sense on my own. And so what I do is I lay out my pieces. I get as many pieces as I can, and I have, different, all my reference books are right here, right within reach, and so I have different reference books. I have, books on written English and, you know, all the rules on written English, and I have, books on specific parts of the sentence. I have books on punctuation. I even have old, textbooks from, I don't know, I think these are like, this might be a high school book that I have, but I get them from different age groups, and from before my time, so that I can have that more consistent structure and consistent explanation. And I get them from the younger grades as well, because those books are geared to explaining the language in more basic terms. And so many times I think students of English end up with yes, you need the books written for adults because, you're not an idiot and you need to be treated as an intelligent person, but I think oftentimes those books put too much it's too cerebral, it's too much in your head, too intellectual and not practical. It's not on a, you know, on an I don't wanna say everyday level, but I think you understand what I mean. Um, so I use the younger books to give me that less intellectual understanding of it and the more basic, the more practical understanding. So I lay out all my pieces and I look at what I have and then I try to group I'll name out my parts. Okay, this is the subject, where is the subject? And I find it over here. Or what the main clause, okay, what does it say the main clause is? What is a clause, Okay, so I have a clause. We have our main clause, we have independent clauses, and we have dependent clauses. So, okay, what does that mean? A lot of times you can get a clue from the name of the piece, so the main clause to me says that if it's the main thing, think of a main event. This is the thing you're coming to see. So, okay, so my main clause is the thing that the sentence is all about. All right, so I've got that over here. This is what the thing is all about. Now, what's a dependent clause? A dependent clause is something that relies upon another clause to give it life and give it existence. So this dependent clause cannot stand on its own. It has to have something else supporting it. So, think of your children are your dependents. They depend on you for their support and their upbringing and whatever. So I try to relate the words of, that the part is named, the words within the name. I try to relate them to something that makes sense to the um, the position that it holds, but also to me in my life. What's going to make sense here? What's going to help me remember it? So you have your main clause, and in that main clause, you're going to have your subject and your verb. So the person or thing or place that you're talking about, and then the action that's happening. That's your basic guts of your sentence. And then you have your clauses, your different kinds of clauses. Okay, so then you look at each part and you kind of break each part down to its core. And then you put those pieces together in within the structure. All right. So that's how I have to do it. So I gather them all together, then I break it down, and then I put them back together in a way that makes sense to me with the understanding that I now have. I can then say, "Oh, that makes sense. Susie over here is doing this thing and it's having this effect." Or, so that's what all this other stuff means. It's having this effect. And this word, I can see it now, is actually describing what kind of an effect the stuff that Susie did is having on all these other things. So that's that's the best way that I found to help make sentence structure, attainable, and where I can actually use it, and I don't have to care about what it's called. I just have to care about what it does and where it goes. And once I learn all of that and I get comfortable in all of that, then I can comfortably play with it. It's like an artist who, Picasso and others like him who were um, creating new, what's the word I'm looking for? New movements, new. movements within the art world, everyone who came along the line who did something completely different that seemed to break the rules, they were just using the rules more adeptly than the other people, but they still had to know the rules. They weren't Picasso wasn't just randomly putting splotches and different weird shapes on the paper for no reason, all right? The the way he used the rules, the way he worked within the rules or outside of the rules was all based on his solid foundation and knowledge and mastery of the rules. And so that's why another reason why it's so important for you to really be comfortable with and, in a sense, master the English sentence structure for yourself. You know, you might be taking exams that you might be required to take certification exams that prove that you know the language. Um, and those mainly focus on your proficiency within it, within the language. But in order to take it from proficiency to fluency, you want to be able to be so comfortable with the rules that you can now shift things up a little bit to say to transmit your messages in a way that suits you and fits you while still making your message understandable to everyone to whom you're spreading it, okay? So, I hope that made sense. And then the final thing that you do once you've, got your understanding of the different parts, practice. Practice, practice, practice. Because just like when you're practicing your sounds, and I had you go through all of those exercises, you listen and then you watch what happens. You watch how they produce the sounds, and then you do it. You put what you've listened to and what you've watched together so that you can reproduce the sound and you nail it every time. Then, just like I'm having you do that, then you practice, practice, practice so that you can get that sound every time and so that your brain and your mouth work together, because you're going to hear those sounds and your brain will say English and it will automatically trigger your mouth to speak English, not your language, not a combination of the two. This is the same thing that you're doing here with the sentence structure. You need to be able to have that automatic recognition. Again, fluency is all about transitioning fluidly, from from your language into the English language, and then being able to move about fluidly, seamlessly, easily, whichever word you want to use, or all of them, within the language. Okay, without having to struggle over putting the parts together. So that's where the practice comes in. That's, think of practicing your English as, doing your arm curls or running on the treadmill or whatever your exercise routine is, because you have to build up those muscles. All right. So that's the best analogy I can give you as far as practicing and why it's so important. People, again, you hear practice, I have to practice. It's like, the child who's stuck inside practicing the violin while everybody else is outside playing their favorite game. It's really hard to keep your focus um, when you're practicing. My mother tells this story when she was little. Her mother, apparently, I never really knew her mother. She died when I was young, and they had moved to Florida. So we're up, north in the Northeast in America. the Northeast, so they were thousands of miles away. Um, but apparently she was a beautiful violinist and a beautiful piano player, a pianist. And so she had my mother take piano lessons, and my mother, in her stubbornness, would play, um, what was it? It was either Chopsticks or the Indian War Dance or something was the name of the song. And she would play, my grandmother told her, "You have to practice for 20 minutes a day." So my mother, in her infinite wisdom, as she says, would play that same song over and over again for 20 minutes. She never went beyond it. She was fighting against the practicing, and, she regrets it now, but, again, all the kids were playing, and so I always use that as, how am I looking at this? Am I looking at it as my piano practice, or am I looking at this as my workout that is gonna make me better and stronger, faster, like the TV show, The $6 Million Man? Um, it's a mindset thing, and you have to look it just depends on how you look at it. If you look at sentence structure as drudgery, or the practicing of it as drudgery, then that's what it will be for you, and I'm not usually one for, you know, I don't know. I guess that's a cliche, maybe it is, but in this case, it becomes a cliche because it's just so true, and that's what you got. It's kind of like I can use a couple, you get out of it what you put into it. There's another cliche that we use, another saying that we use. So really think about, how are you approaching the topic of sentence structure? Are you going into it with fear and trepidation, or are you going into it with the understanding of, "Oh, this makes sense. I'm building my house. So I can't have a wobbly structure. So now I understand why I have to do it." And that was another thing too when I was going to school, and I'm sure there are many people out there, many of you are the same way. I I'm fine to just do things, but I really like to know why. Why am I doing this? Why is this important? It might not be important to me, but if it's important to someone else, okay, great. I'll help you out. I'll do it. But if it's something like learning a language, or, learning, or something that involves me and really has an impact on me, I like to know why. I like to know how the pieces fit together. Oh, what is this? What is this piece called? And why is it called that? And where does it go? And what does it do? I'm just that kind of person. And so, um, to me, learning the structure is like learning how things work, and learning how things fit together. I've always had that kind of an approach. So, if you don't have that approach, if that isn't something that you tend to do, give yourself a challenge and try to start thinking that way, because it's led me on so many wonderful little expeditions, as I call them, and I find out so many interesting things, which only adds to my knowledge. But I can also use that in completely different areas. And it's always stored in your brain for the day when you're gonna need it to have something to help make something make sense, So, um, yeah, so I think what I'll do for the next one, for the noon, my brain just shut down. For the noon live, is I will go through the sentence structures. I'll still reiterate this, and I'll still go through the tips and everything, but I will add the just a quick bit of about what the different the basic sentence structures are. But go ahead and click on the link and check out the resources, because I put a lot of time and energy into making them clear and understandable, and I just give you so many different things within the resource that you can use. There's, like I said, there's worksheets. There's several worksheets that help you, that give, that not only help you to identify the different sentence structures, but also to have you work with the structures in many ways so that there's your practice. You don't have to try to come up with something. I've already come up with it for you. But it doesn't do the work for you. It allows you to work with it just in a guided way so that you have that expert help right there as you're doing it. Um, and again, you're working with the same things in many different ways. And so that only helps you to remember it and to assimilate the information. So really check out the sale because it will be gone at 11:59 tonight. So I'd hate to have you miss out. I really tried to make it accessible for everyone. So anyway, so see you at noon, and if you can't come then just definitely watch the replay because I don't want you to miss out. This is such an area of stress for people, and I'm here to relieve that stress. And again, know that I went through the same struggles, and this is my own language. So you're doing fine. This is to help you do better and to make it easier for you. All right. So I'm really glad you could join us today and join me. It's just me, unless you count me, myself, and I. Um, so anyway, I'm really glad you could come and we'll see you soon. Okay. All right. And if not, we'll see you next Monday. All right. Bye bye.